I love Chris Matthews because, he was a born bootlicker with a knee-jerk deference to power. And he can never ask a tough question of anyone in power if it's might hurt his career. So he's a Catholic. He always has these Catholic guys come on all the time on his show, and he never asks them a tough question. In fact, he'll go, he's our scholar. He's our Catholic scholar. You've heard me play those clips on the show before, where he refers to people, that's our Catholic scholar, and he never calls BS on these guys, right? So, he never called BS like, I've said this before. I'll say it again. When I started stand-up comedy, which I started, and I don't want to say back in 1989, was my first open mic. I was 4. And that very night, there were comedians on stage at my first open mic in Chicago. There were comedians making pedophile jokes about priests. So anybody who says... then it took about, 15 more years for the story to break nationally, right? And what it took was some people going to civil court and suing. And then they got these big awards, and all of a sudden the press was like, hey, maybe we should report this. Maybe we should talk about how the priests are raping kids, and then they're covering it up. Not one journalist seemed to be able to make that connection or want to report it. And even if there were journalists who wanted to report it, they didn't get reported. They got edited out of their newscasts or newspapers or whatever they were doing. Here's Chris Matthews. Now, he had a show. He's had a show for a long time. He's been a journalist for a long time. And here's what he says, why he missed the story of Catholic pedophilia. And this is all in the light of the Jerry Sandusky trial, because he's saying, well, this is a good thing that they're having this Jerry Sandusky trial, he says, because they're using the real words now. They're not just saying molest. What does that mean, he says? Now they're talking about what he did. You heard bodies slapping together. And so he's saying that this is a good thing, that we're no longer whitewashing it. And, well, here, I'll just play the clip and we'll talk. Here we go.
Journalism has to be respectful. I understand that. But for years, these cases of adult sexual abuse of children has been soft-pedaled in the media. We've gotten used to words like molested without any idea what's being described. There's been too much avoidance of what should have been described clearly. The result has been an unintentional downplaying of the charges. Perhaps, just perhaps, this has helped the perpetrators and those covering up for them escape the full public outrage and with it rebuke that finally occurred but didn't for so long in such cases. I'm referring to my church here. Like so many millions of others, I never got the picture in the early going. I never understood what was going on in these cases of priests abusing older boys. Never could get my thinking around it properly because of the hesitant manner in which the cases and allegations were reported.
Okay, so it's not his fault.
Really?
It's the media's fault for not using the words that would actually trigger his brain to question authority.
Unbelievable.
That's Chris Matthews.
That's unbelievable.
So this kid is saying he was molested. What does that mean?
What does it mean?
Who knows what that could possibly mean?
Matthews feels the time is right to stand up and say this because, as usual, he's 10 years too late.
Perfect timing.
Yes, because when it comes to righteous indignation, nobody can fake it like Chris Matthews can.
He's annoyed.
And Chris Matthews, not only Chris.
Both those guys.
Crick Matthews is actually a good country singer.
Watching in Crick Matthews, it was a terrible duo, though.
What word would have been better? Bone? I don't know.
I don't know what would have been.
Yeah, and just the idea that, I was a Catholic, and like you said, and I remember being aware of pedophilia in the Catholic for decades ago.
Yes.
It's not. It just became, there were cases, but it was something that was known, and the idea that like in 1985 or whatever, Chris Matthews was naive about it. Oh, there's reports of abuse. I can't wrap my head around that.
I can't wrap my head around that there's priests raping.
Yeah.
Because they're not using the right euphemism. They're saying stuff like molested and abused and tons of priests raping boys. I guess that didn't sink in when he heard tons of priests rape. What does that mean, tons of priests?
It's coded speech. Priests raping boys. I can't unpack that in my mind.
I can't wrap my head around this molesting priest raping boys thing. What does that mean? Are they going for ice cream? What does that mean exactly?
And I can totally picture Chris Matthews back then going, well, that priest seems a little weird with kids, but he's being transferred to another parish, so You don't have to worry about him.
Yeah.
They've taken care of that problem.
The media should have let the public know whether it was good molesting or bad molesting.
Yes, I'm with you. Early on, Chris Matthews, early on, he never understood what was going on with the priests molesting altar boys because the church kept denying it. And why would they lie about something like that?
What would they have to lose? That's what I
would
can't figure out.
And how could you possibly conceive that an institution of celibate men dressed in weird costumes would be into anything crazy like that?
It's because they used the wrong words. Matthews would have had a much clearer picture of sexual abuse that was going on if he'd only had a dictionary.
And I would say about the Catholic Church, they've used the wrong word. They've used the word religion. I think cult is more appropriate.
I agree.
And then
with
maybe if we start calling it a cult, maybe people can wrap their heads around the fact that it's just that it does do good charity things and stuff, but a lot of it institutionally is really completely crazy as any other, as Scientology or any cult that you could
that you could ever think of. It
Yes.
goes all the way to the top too. By the way, It
Blue
goes all-
Oyster Cult?
goes.
No, not as crazy as them, but
It's just funny, all those years, Chris Matthews just couldn't get the truth out of those priests and church officials because they were being interviewed by Chris Matthews.